Hello, my name is Zahar Karetsky and welcome to the Transitions Visions podcast, a podcast series about and for the sustainability transitions community. I am a transitions scholar at Eindhoven University of Technology in the Netherlands, and for a long time I've had this feeling that transition studies and sustainability transitions community needs a podcast as an additional means to keep conversations going and make them available for the larger community inside of the Sustainability Transitions Research Network, but also outside of it. I believe that the work we do in this interdisciplinary field is important and interesting to share, and although the target audience is of course the transitions community, the discussions and topics that are raised could also be interesting to other communities beyond. Especially because we are all experiencing or seeing the impacts of the climate crisis. Some of us feel it in the prices, and for some of us, especially in the global south, the entire livelihoods are affected. So in this podcast series, I plan to invite everyone and anyone concerned with transitions, particularly sustainability transitions. And it doesn't really matter if it's an academic or a policymaker or an activist. Those are all social constructs anyway. We'll talk in these episodes about transitions, about how and why it is important for systems to shift from one state to another, about the hurdles in practice and theory, about interdisciplinarity and about cutting-edge research. And by doing so, by having these live conversations, that will hopefully contribute to more debate in the field. I think debate outside and across our departments in such a way is very important. It's very important to keep the field alive and to keep our collective cogs working. So I hope you enjoy this first episode. We open up with a bang, I would say. I've talked to a very exciting and controversial pair of guests from the University Rebellion. Now, University Rebellion is a branch of the well-known Extinction Rebellion, and specifically I talked to the Dutch branch of University Rebellion, and even more specifically I talked to the Eindhoven University of Technology group. And this group has been very active in the past year, in 2022 and 2023. So, as a group of concerned students and sustainability-minded students, they have stirred the pot in TUE and in Dutch academia with their occupations and their general militant stance regarding breaking ties with fossil fuels companies like Shell. They remind a lot of people of the student protests of the 70s too. So of course I had to speak with them first. I spoke with Aaron Rubin and Thea Bradley, who are both students of TUE. And we talked about universities teaching and embracing sustainability, students' motivation for protesting, direct action at universities, and also about blowing up pipelines. So enjoy this first episode of Transitions Visions, and I hope you come back for the second one.
Aaron, I joined UR somewhere in the last year, I think. I study nuclear fusion here, master's degree. Yes. I don't know if you want any more introduction.
No, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah, my name's Thea. I am currently finishing my bachelor's in computer science here, and I've been with UR from the start, from when we started it in 2020, as a national kind of movement, but that kind of died out during COVID, but us on campus have been active all the time around since. So
yeah. Well, of course, one of the first things that I at least want to know from when I joined this university is looking at your activities here and since last spring or since this spring, is what kind of motivations are you guys guided by?
I mean, it's
personally, yeah.
For me, it's always been kind of, I don't know, navigating the world and kind of observing what's going on and around. And if you see something that's a bit odd or needs addressing, you just find ways of trying to address it, right? And that could be talking to people and you meet people who are like-minded and take a more active route of direct action, which is how we see we can bring topics onto the table or raise attention and create like faster, more needed change when you are then again observing your environment kind of. So I think we came from a stage in 2020 when there was absolutely nothing going on. Sustainability was not even mentioned kind of in the 4-year plan, or maybe only mentioned once. I remember there being some kind of outrage about it.
The university plan.
Yes, exactly. So it was just kind of, people from like activisty backgrounds or like exile backgrounds who just really kind of were students on campus and started thinking like, there's stuff here that needs addressing. How can we act where we are involved, because that's how I started it.
Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah, it's something very similar for me. I think it's just looking around and observing that we're at a point that something definitely needs to be done. Yet, as far as I can see, much too little is happening. So there's a void there, which I'm hoping in this way will try to help fill up, bring on a bit more pressure, and hopefully get things to actually change a bit faster than they're currently doing.
And you guys are particularly focusing on the university, doing something.
Yeah, that's kind of, at least with University Rebellion, is kind of, I think our slogan is democratize, decarbonize, decolonize, and it is focused on kind of those are the values that we have, and it is focused on university because that is the place where we have most contact and context and kind of know a bit on the inner workings and are able to observe it. Like I could have been active with Extinction Rebellion as well, but I'm not that involved with Dutch culture in the Netherlands, or kind of knowing what's going on politically, what kind of decisions are being made. So for me, the best places where I can be active are the places where I know stuff is happening. So for me, that is definitely on campus because I'm very involved with the community here, and
Makes sense. Yeah. Aaron?
Yeah. I guess this is along similar lines. My second home, basically, where I spent far most of my time. So I feel quite involved in what's going on here, and I want the best to come out of the plans that this uni makes, which I'll try to change that to the better.
Yeah, so it's kind of this societal, sort of civil indignation of the horrible stuff that's happening in terms of environment. That's where you're
but it is also, for me, a big thing is kind of what I believe, or what we believe kind of as a group, what the role of a university should be, because kind of universities are funded by like government to like a big part as well, and it is your kind of what is the role of a university in society, right? It's for me like to shape human beings, to have them be critical and to go out and navigate the world in an ethical way. So learning to be critical thinkers, and just kind of, it really is a place that's kind of molded, and a place where knowledge comes out of, right? And it is not just kind of any kind of knowledge that comes out of unis. It is stuff like climate stuff and all of those things that has been like science and repeated for ages. But we also believe kind of that there is some kind of role that universities should have of kind of maybe putting more pressure on the government and being like, we are producing this knowledge and stuff that we get money from. This is our role in society, so please act upon it. Otherwise, you're just creating stuff for the void or for no purpose or for certificates and stats. But that's also kind of me as a student. If I were to come out with something, you'd want it to be taken kind of seriously. Otherwise, what's kind of the point? So it's also kind of what I think we believe the roles of universities are.
Yeah. Because academic education shouldn't be just teaching a student for 5 years such that they can roll into a job at a company and just live their lives. But more than that, also you need to teach them critical thinking and see what change needs to be made. Also include that, not just, this is a job they have, this is what you need to know, go ahead.
Yeah. What kind of stuff are you guys reading in terms of this activism or environment or rebellion?
I mean, for me, I'm not particularly reading anything about it or anything in relation to like climate science and stuff. To me, it's all stuff that I seek out myself naturally through discussions and friends, because I know like in my bachelor's as well, there's no link to anything climate related at all. And I think that's a bit preposterous, kind of, that you're not even, especially with everything being so dire and kind of act now being very important. The fact that computer science is so apart and extracted to anything related to the world, because you're just so deep into the field of learning about some algorithms or databases and the modeling of those. It's so out of it, and I feel like we have, especially kind of now here in the global north, as people, kind of our impact and our role within society is a lot more than just diving deep into a certain field. I think it's part of the role of university to kind of educate about our role and our impact, and not always have a technocratic, techno-optimistic approach of all tech will solve the world. Just think for the most efficient solution, because no, that will involve kind of exploiting other countries to kind of get the materials for that, and you can't just like slap some techno solution into some country and then be all like white saviory about it. I think it's really important to kind of know who we are in relation to the rest of the world, and kind of also do some amendments based on it, or just even just acknowledging like the position they have, the position of privilege of kind of not living the consequences of climate change at the minute, because movements like Fridays for Future and stuff like that, they always say kind of, we are fighting for our future. It's like for our future and also for the lives that are being lost currently. It's not just for our future. It's not just something far off. So kind of, living in that illusion bubble of we can fix everything with technology and we're so deep into the field that we don't care about something. For me, it's having lots of discussions like that led to the conclusion of what is the role of a university, and it is a lot more than they're doing currently, in my opinion.
And it's ironic that you are a student of a technical university.
Yes.
That you
Yeah, amazing.
Is it?
I think it's something that you see in many of the technical studies here, where indeed sustainability or any of such a broader topic is just not really included in the basics of the education.
Yeah.
I mean, there are courses that you can choose, I suppose. I think mostly from other faculties.
Yeah.
But I also I did a Bachelor of Physics. I mean, of course, there's some things should be sustainable, but not nearly what we want to see, I think.
And we have the privilege of like navigating the world in this university without having to face any of those topics. It's only if you actively seek them out that you get in touch with them, and that's also part of the big problem, because we are part of the big old polluting nations in the West that have exploited all of the other ones. And if we aren't even aware of kind of what's going on, and we're not confronting ourselves with it, because we don't have to, we're not getting a bloody storm destroying like our habitats,
Not yet.
Not yet anyway, and it's scary reading like Guardian articles about like by 2030 countries or like cities like London will be running out of like fresh water supply, and I'm just thinking in my head horrible thoughts like, oh fuck, if white people start dying from it, then maybe the world will care, but it is that privilege of not having to be confronted with it every single day. We get to go to a university where we don't have to take any specific courses about like root causes of climate change, but we get, maybe if we elect kind of some course about solutions for it, So that's also just kind of circumventing the root cause and where change does need to happen, and
Yeah, I think for me that the first time that was properly addressed was the first lecture of the nuclear fusion master, basically, where, right, because many people think, oh, once we get to fusion, this will solve all our energy needs in a clean and unlimited way. And that was basically the topic of the first half of the first lecture. Well, no, it won't. And to get that point across, some truth actually had to be told about the position we're currently at. And for me, that was a major wake-up call. Wow, I knew it was bad, but it is very bad. That was the first time that I can recall in my, at any point during a lecture, something was mentioned along the lines of the actual position of the climate crisis that we're at, and the projections for the future. Sorry.
Now, I'm trying to think. With my previous question, I was trying to sort of tease out in terms of your activism. What are you guys reading or exploring? Whether it's The Guardian or whether it's something else in the uni or by yourselves. Is it something? I mean, for example, there was this very recently a movie called about how to blow up a pipeline.
Yes.
Have you watched that?
Yes, I guess I did.
So it's also based on a book of a guy who's really
No, I think all of those things are kind of always in topic, but I think the only reason I feel like I don't want to say so informed because I'm not in the field, and it feels sometimes like impostery when people ask you to debate about lay out all the facts there, But for me, it's just all about kind of having these discussions, being around people who also question stuff, and from there learning a lot, because you don't know about your own thoughts upon a topic before you're confronted with it or confronted with a new angle. And for me, like all of those kind of concepts of global north, global south, I hadn't heard before I joined activism, and it's like all asking those questions and seeing a lot of things that kind of make sense, and you're like, this is not talked about, and people aren't exposed to this like often enough to have to think about or question it, because like I said, we live in this privileged bubble where we don't have to think about it every day, and if we force it upon us, it is really scary and horrible and not a great place to be in, which is why you also need the community aspect of activism. It is a lot of community, it is a lot of kind of being scared about the future and then chatting about it and trying to find out what the causes are, so you feel like you have a bit more power by doing the direct action and bringing stuff onto the topic, stuff that's been stuck in bureaucracy, kind of stuff that you see people trying to work on, but the urgency is not there. So it takes sometimes people to put a bit more attention and bring some urgency in there. But yeah.
Yeah. Now my mind is jumping onto the topic of the Extinction Rebellion, and in the UK. Obviously, their actions are very visible. And I guess that was before you joined the university. So what was then your perceptions of these guys protesting?
I think I didn't really pay too much attention to it, to be honest. But then again, I've been sitting here this is my 5th year. I think 5 years ago, it was also a lot less visible. These groups were a lot smaller, I think, or at least the ones that I saw. I mean, there was Greenpeace. They did big actions, not necessarily non-violent direct actions, I'd say. Which things like that I do recall looking at, thinking, well, they might have a point, and it's good that there's someone doing that. Wouldn't have been me, at least what I thought
at that time.
Yeah. Also, say 2 years ago, I wouldn't have pictured myself sitting here, because it's good to get attention, of course, with your actions, but a sad reality is most attention that you get is quite negative.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of a reaction people have that they don't want to like a biological reaction where you don't want to face something that's scaring you, which is the direction we're heading at, and a way to cope with that is to say, I'll just make fun of these people.
And there are interesting analogs or similarities with the University Rebellion and also the student protests of previous decades, of the 60s, of the 70s. Do you see those parallels? Do you maybe get inspired somehow?
Yeah, I mean, student protests are always kind of, I don't know, interesting and yeah. I feel like it's always kind of, it's all kind of based on community and stuff like that. And that if it's students doing something together, it just feels like you have some kind of power or agency in something. And it's always kind of inspiring, kind of seeing a group of young people kind of get together and discuss. I mean, you always kind of hear about in front of every kind of revolution or visiting any kind of country, it's like, oh yeah, these students were like political and met in this place and in another place. So I think like being a student and making stuff political has always been part of history and kind of inspiring, you know. And you have had different changes based on it. And what I also loved, again, bringing it back to seeing kind of Extinction Rebellion kind of grow, I think around 2018, it's what was also so fantastic about that it wasn't just students, but you just saw lots and lots of people come together, and it looked like, obviously, while the topics were dire, like the actions themselves looked like a lot of fun. Like there was like boats on the street and people like finding joy and community together while also putting a massive amount of pressure just by showing up. And even while I think even in the beginning, while I was on the side of finding it really cool, you also noticed, like Aaron said, kind of it being kind of like, ooh, weird and blah, blah, blah. And now I feel like we've come to another place again where Extinction Rebellion is gone back to being seen as a bit tame, or at least more accepted, just because the way of protesting that they've done is kind of like normalized now, you know? So it's not scary anymore to join a big protest, because first of all, the protests are much, much, much bigger and all over the place. And it seems like a fantastic kind of, well, I say fun, it is also very intense because you kind of risk arrests and like police violence and all the other things you expose yourself to. But I think on a wider picture, there is like a semblance of joy and kind of community, and also just kind of taking matters up into your own hands as a community and putting pressure there where you think it happens. And also, just by the fact that it is so big, it just makes it so accessible to do so as well and less risky than. Yeah.
So then it's good also for growth of the movement, I guess.
It's for growth of the movement, but I also think it's good for like kind of like it's the standard of kind of where protesting is at. It's a lot further, and the scene a lot less radical as where it was maybe in 2018, because that's when it was fresh and new, and that means you can explore stuff that also pushes the boundaries a little bit more in terms of how it is seen as more radical. So that you can, like, I say continue to radicalize. I know the word radical will like cause a lot of red flags for some people, but I'm going for like the Latin of it, which is radix, which means going to the root and really seeing the root causes and kind of pushing more toward going right to where the problem starts, rather than slapping a little band-aid on the consequences and trying to delay the inevitable or pretend you care about the inevitable. So I find it fantastic that the new normal, or something that was seen as radical, is big protests, and I like that people can access that easy enough, and that also explores room to be able to put a bit more pressure in some other direct ways. And that also comes from like the film you mentioned, How to Blow Up a Pipeline, that is violent in some kind of way, and also a fantastic kind of book to kind of read and see how you position yourself on what you think violence is, whether you consider blowing up a pipeline to be violent or not. Not saying I would do it, but yeah, it's just topics to tackle with, because you are actually like weighing a lot of human lives at stake, and yeah, I don't know. A lot of thoughts in there, sorry.
That's great.
I think Extinction Rebellions and all related groups such as you are also really benefit from the non-violent part of NVDA, where, as far as I know, to the whole world, it's known that if an action organized by XR or UR or anything alike takes place, one thing is that you can be sure of is that there will be no violence coming from the protesters. Yeah. And that also, you see that also in the public that attends these actions, which is extremely diverse,
Yeah.
going from young childs to grandparents of those childs, people in wheelchairs, anything which normally with a big protest, I think you'd see a lot less.
Yeah. I mean, the students of the 60s managed to change stuff for themselves, for their world. So maybe it's time for us as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying. We had an occupation a while ago, back in, was it December? Where I think the board at university kind of finally agreed to be transparent on some of the funding, which is something that had been tried to be pushed for ages and always, and was stuck in massive bureaucracy and people not really wanting to deal with it. So even just through like occupying the executive board's meeting room for a week and a bit can achieve that result, and then put pressure on other universities to do so. I think it's just stuff that is bare minimum that should have been done, but through just a tiny bit of initiative and organising, because I think like there weren't much more than 5 to 10 people organising the whole occupation that we had back in December. You know, it really is about cleverly thinking, who am I, where am I at, who can I talk to, what can I do, how can I bring attention to this, what can I do that's a bit silly, what can I do that will be talked about, what can I do that will be maybe a little bit controversial just to get other people to talk about and meme about it, because it's not always about reaching the people who will be completely against you, but it will be about reaching people who aren't maybe thinking about the topic because they're not confronted with it, and having those conversations.
Right, this is something I was also going to ask. So who is the addressee of your actions? So you have who is the recipient, the intended recipient?
Of our actions, I mean, I don't know if there's like any intended recipient per se. I think it's just, seeing where we can bring topics onto something, and it could be just by doing more public actions to try and get students, passerbys to come chat to us and see if they want to help get involved and organise, because we aren't like a hierarchical organisation with a board or something. It's really kind of, you come in based on your own capacity and what you can give, and if you have an idea, come and pitch it and we can see how we can get organised about it, because it's mostly about if it aligns with our values, which is mostly kind of like don't be shit. We've got them written out more nicely, but that's the main gist. And that's how you get organised. And sometimes the target of our last occupation in May was to call attention to the protester ties that the new rector has with Ineos, a big chemical giant. But university really wasn't having that on their image, so they just kind of let security beat us up, kind of. Yeah. So it's mad. It's mad just kind of doing a protest to kind of draw attention to something on a university that's so focused on their image that the chair of the CDB just drags you across the floor himself in an assaulty kind of way and won't even acknowledge it still. So it's, image and protests, depending on, again, who you aim at it, is, I don't know.
Well, if it's direct action, so non-violent direct action, then supposedly it's targeted towards, the exact structures.
I think in general, like on average over all the actions, the target is the university and by extension its board, because they have ultimately the most power to dictate what happens here and change the way things are going. But the recipients can also be the whole of the university, also students, and hopefully we're trying to reach more employees as well and teachers. But the way we try to organize something is such that we're not hindering these people, because they're just trying to do their job or trying to study here. We don't want to cause them any nuisance.
That's true. Yeah, because there's also like a disruptive bit with direct action. So especially at a technical uni that likes to kind of have a very apolitical kind of attitude toward it. If you do actions that are a bit too silly, that might work on a more artsy university, like covering yourself in oil to make a statement. I think if some engineer walks by, not going to get much out of it except for just being like, look at that idiot not offering any solutions, right? So you have to find a way to... It's the target again is like the whole university and people kind of as a whole to start questioning stuff, or just bring topics in. And the more people start talking about something, the more pressure there is, because those conversations might enter discussions where decisions are made, you know. So if you point at something, you hope maybe that somewhere within the uni it will be brought up to attention, and that involves reaching out to people personally at Go Green office and having contacts here and there, just kind of keeping you informed about what's going on so that you can address it, put a big public moment on it by finding a strategic way of not pissing off people that could be your allies, and making it a bit silly and fun. And I feel like one thing that I did during the occupations was I was cutting people's hair, and my little slogan moment was cutting hair until you cut ties. And that involved just kind of any student or anyone who came by the occupation to just sit down in my chair, and I just chop their hair for free, and also just kind of talk about what we're doing. And it's just, first of all, from the outside, it seems very fun and silly. People talk about it, and it also brings people in to start thinking about stuff, and then you just get known as the hairdresser during occupations, because I liked to support other occupations happening in the country by doing that, and just kind of building something that people talk about naturally and bring it into their lives. That's what we ultimately want to achieve as well, but also the consequences of doing these actions is some results, because we do put pressure on stuff to work, and then stuff happens, and the attitude towards protesting also kind of shifts a bit, and you see like, oh yeah, I have something I can do, something that's accessible enough, and it does give you a little sense of control in a world where everything's just chaotic as fuck. But yeah.
What I really loved during the first occupation was the study room, which had been set up, which is just a meeting room usually used by the higher ups, I'd say, which had been occupied, and sign study room, please be relatively quiet. And now it's for students. That was what ultimately brought me into the whole movement. Just, I don't want to initially, just by first walking by it, I don't want to get full into the midst of things and all of a sudden join an occupation. We're just sitting here studying and showing to the world that there are people here. That felt like a very nice way to join and to do a part without getting too mixed in. I think things like that, where you do include other students, other people walking by, without throwing everything at them all at once.
I think it's very, very important kind of on that to kind of show that protesting is not something that's mad or radical with a big R or something like that. It's part of our like fundamental rights, and that's why we have to also think, like you said with the study room, it was a really easy, low barrier way to kind of show that you're not okay with things are going, but not having to actively be part of like planning, scheming, coordinating, or something that you feel is much bigger than what you can do, or just seems scary from the outside. But also I think kind of how protests have been treated on campus, it is kind of a funky place to be at the minute, because I think like at the Career Expo in like 15th of March, a year and a bit ago now, we had a very, very peaceful protest where we were about 20 people with a piece of cardboard protesting the presence of the fossil fuel industry. And after 15 minutes, there were like 6 police vans and some pretty violent arrests, and I got carried out of that building and spent 6 hours in a cell, got fined €200 for trespassing, and university did not acknowledge that for 8 months. So you're in a situation as an outsider where you see people getting like brutalized by cops. The whole situation is not addressed. How do you think you have a voice on campus, you know? And even when we did the protest a year later, and it happened a lot smoothly, because I don't think university wanted to be put in that shit of a light again, passerbys would just say stuff like, we really support you guys, and when I was just saying like, yeah, sit down for like 5 minutes with us, it seemed like, no. So it's also kind of now, because of that incident, we're kind of trying to show people as well. And we've been working with Amnesty to kind of bring back also the right to protest, which is also something that's important kind of to our values as University Rebellion, just make sure that it is, find ways of making it seem like accessible, and also educating about kind of what our rights are and seeing how we can best use direct action to bring attention to things, but also bring back that activism in itself is not a big old scary radical thing, because that's kind of how the attitude towards protesting is kind of sadly in the Netherlands at the minute. And also that's what Amnesty's big old national campaign is working on, just kind of showing that protesting is part of our rights.
You think it's specific to the Netherlands? It's because of that?
It's specific to... there's been an Amnesty report in the Netherlands about like protesting in the Netherlands, kind of saying that how it is seen publicly at the minute, it's less than a fundamental right to defend, but kind of a nuisance to... I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact title anymore, but it was seen as a nuisance to be kind of put aside rather than a right to be facilitated. That's kind of the attitude in the Netherlands at the minute. So it's kind of mixing a balance of all of those things about activism seeming a bit more radical, but also being part of your rights, and then just being painted that way, and the reaction to it being that extreme that you can't bring it back to something as casual as just joining a protest, sit down for 5 minutes, because that's kind of how it is seen and received. So it's also part of the climate of what's kind of going on at the minute, I'd say.
Yeah, I haven't seen that report you're talking about, but it does make sense to me, having grown up in the Netherlands. I mean, initially I was quite, scared is a big word, but I wasn't quite sure if I wanted to mix myself in with UR, because, and I never thought about it like that at the time, thinking back. What I think happened, partly subconsciously, is that I've always seen protesting and demonstrating as something that very angry people do, because they're very angry at something. and these are people that, you want to steer clear from. And so if these people are here occupying a boardroom, they must be so incredibly angry to do this. And I don't know if I want to meet and talk to these people, until I finally did, and I was completely flabbergasted by the atmosphere there, where everyone's so damn nice.
We're really cozy, so to anyone listening who's scared of University Rebellion, just reach out to us, and we're really lovely, I promise.
I can just
shout out, sorry.
It's not that you show up, draw your signature, and sell your soul to activism. It's just attending a few of their actions, dropping by that. It's very cool you're doing this. And at a certain point, starting to get more involved.
Did you bring anybody from your friends who work or who study here as well to the rebellion?
A bit, I think. I don't know what the right word is used. Entered. Let's keep it at that. Roughly together with my boyfriends. Via the first occupation was the first time that we'd heard of UR before, mainly due to the news coming out about the arrests during the Career Expo, and during that occupation, we went to the study room to just sit there and be there. And I sent a few messages to other friends. So you should also come here. It's very nice, and people are lovely. And so I think 1 or 2 other friends showed up that are currently perhaps still in the process of slowly getting more involved, or perhaps they like to attend an action every now and then and keep it at that, which of course is great in itself.
Are you prepared to pick up the mantle when other people leave the rebellion because they graduate?
Well, I think I'm already quite far in my studies as well to do that. Although I've only been here for half a year. Well, I'm expecting to graduate within, say, 2 years. Yeah. But I think just by sticking around, attending meetings, attending actions, and just slowly absorbing information. You at a certain point get to a place where you feel more comfortable with taking. I don't want to say the lead, because that's not the way things go, but taking initiative.
Because it seems intimidating, because you're surrounded by people who've just gained so much confidence through doing activism for a while as well. So it gets scary when you're like, oh fuck, these people are doing stuff like getting arrested or like talking to police like they're mates. You know, it's weird and funky, and it takes a while until you kind of get that. But for me, it took my first time getting arrested to just not be scared about it, because first of all, I was not in the wrong. It was a peaceful protest, and the municipality and police and university was like, "Nah, we're not having that today," and swept us away. But we got the court case got dropped instantly, and fined for trespassing, absolute bollocks. You know,
trespassing the university.
It's absolutely weird and funky and mad. But it's once you've kind of been behind that, or once that you've had like one meeting with Robert Jan Smits, like the chair of the executive board, and you come out of it and you just realise I've been talked down to in that entire meeting and not been listened to. So you just go in next time after you had that frustration, and you go in a bit stronger and being like, no, I'm not going to let you talk to me like dismissively or as a PR stunt of we're meeting with the people. And it is really just kind of going through like ridiculous, absurd situations or observing them that you feel more and more kind of either outraged that pushes you, or you just see it as it's just another human. So that can also kind of bring you in, and it's kind of through observing that or having other people who are longer in activism kind of validating or being like, oh yeah, that's a fun idea, we could do that you yourself kind of feel slowly more involved. But I can totally see how as kind of as an outsider, and I know that as well because when I joined, I was with these really cool activisty people. It's a funky, weird line and transition, but as soon as you start getting absorbed a little bit, you slowly hopefully become a little bit more confident, and also because the lifespan of the student activist is really small, because like you graduate, it's come in with what you're ready, with whatever your resources are. It could be with helping eloquently type out text for social media. There's so many ways of doing activism, and there's so many things that we need as well, please. If anyone is curious and wants to help out in just a bit of coordination whenever they can, because it's all based on grassroots and capacities. I feel it's just that people who are kind of very involved are just very involved, because it's really hard. You get kind of emotionally attached to the stuff that you're doing a bit.
So staff and students who want to get involved, what should they do to contact University Rebellion specifically?
Yeah, it's just reach out, send us an email, send us a message via Instagram. We're currently like a bit shit at the integration bit, just because we're mostly focused on getting organised and doing actions that it's hard to integrate people. But as soon as you get like one human in front of you and have a chat, that's how we want to get people in, because ultimately it is community. It is kind of like you can't do actions that kind of put you in a place where you might feel unsafe if you don't feel like you have the support to do so. And activism would be so impossible without the community behind it. So if you want to get involved, have a little follow, join a social event, chat to us when we're out and about, and that's how we can slowly kind of make you feel comfortable enough to be able to just do something / anything, if that's even just like responding to people DMs on Instagram and kind of see like who can I connect them with to have lunch with, you know. It's all based on what you can give and what you're ready to give, not kind of come in and get arrested. Lol.
What I really like, roughly where I'm currently at, is that also within URM I'm still seeing a group of people that have a lot of experience and a lot of passion. And I think in general, these people are also the most visible during actions, which perhaps one day I might be included in the group, who knows. But right now, many people know a few faces, as in many people at the university, just from having seen them or seen news. And I don't think, in general, I stick out a lot. So when I talk about it, I definitely don't shy away from talking about UR or activism. People can be quite surprised. Oh, wait, you do that as well? Oh, wow, but that's great, because now I know someone that I can talk to and ask about what the hell are they doing? And why are they doing it like that? Without me having to be afraid that they'll get mad or whatever, because I know you as a reasonable person, and so then surely the rest must be reasonable as well if you're with them. So,
what these similar movements of the past have been doing is that they have been organizing on the grounds, and then sort of educating other people, the rest of the community, and then also inviting people with expert knowledge to them to talk about things like that. Is it also something that you do?
Yeah, I feel like because activism for us is purely community with doing actions. That means we have like group chats for University Rebellion. Some of us might be in some Fossil chats. There is an old national University Rebellion chat, and it is just through like having real links and connections to other student activists. Then you'll just find out about Fossil in Rotterdam are organising a screening of this documentary. So then you're like, oh, let's go, and then you drag on a few friends that are part of University Rebellion, or just randos that I said I'm going. Who's coming with me? And it's through like that kind of stuff. If there's like a lunch lecture going on one uni, then someone will post about it in one of the social chats, just saying, hey, this is an interesting topic. So it's really the community that kind of brings out the discussions and the knowledge, and because it is topics that you're kind of interested in general as a group.
How do you guys find time amongst your studies as well to do all these things?
It can be very difficult.
Yeah. So it is an offset that you have to struggle always with, or?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a struggle, because, as they already mentioned, everything is based off capacity. So no one is saying, well, you have to do this now, and if you don't, we'll get mad. Well, if there's anyone that has the time and it feels like doing this, please go ahead. And if no one got the time, then nothing happens.
Yeah, which is why, like, I think we mostly have like not many PhD people kind of in UR. So as soon as exam periods come round, like most of the group will not be doing much during then, unless you have maybe 2-3 people who don't have any exams and like, let's do our own little pitch. Come up with this action plan to pitch in one of the meetings when anyone's there again. It's really just based on what you see, what you hear, where you can act, where you've got capacity to act, because ultimately we are a small group, but just by how we have had such a big impact on campus already just also shows that it doesn't take many people or much organising to have like a proper impact, or to seem like you're maybe something bigger than what you are, or have this big old reputation. And it is just, ultimately based on just playing around with what is the impact of this? Will people talk about it? Is it maybe this funky meme about the situation that might get some more topics on it? It's just like students sitting together and just being like, what the frick is going on, and how can we draw attention to it? And sometimes people will be like, nah, I got a deadline, so I can't do this right now. Sometimes I'll be like, oh, I can't make it to meetings for this month because I'm doing a board thingy.
I think, just yesterday we wanted to do a small outreach action with some banners about some fossil companies. And we all got together with 5 of us, did a small check-in with each other, how are you feeling? A bit tired, a bit stressed for my upcoming exams or for deadlines, and don't really feel like talking to people now, but I'll be here just to support you. And one by one, everyone said roughly that. We looked at each other, so
okay. Should
we even be doing this right now? Perhaps not. So we decided to skip this small action because, at the end of the day, you should also be getting at least some energy back out of your actions.
Exactly.
Otherwise, it will completely drain you because these topics are quite heavy and not fun to be working with constantly.
One thing you guys mentioned before is that somebody, like a student who would be coming by somebody who is protesting, who is putting oil on their body, would ask for constructive solutions instead. So do you get this kind of critique that's well, what is your
all the time.
What do you?
I mean, it's funky. I feel like there's a quick attitude of like being very dismissive and saying like, if you have no immediate solution now, you student, then why are you even bothering? I think that's a bit silly. Mostly because like, no, I'm not saying I'm the expert, but it doesn't take anyone with a bit of brains to just know that this is wrong. So, put pressure on the people in charge for them to maybe allocate some resources to some professionals who know a better solution. Because I'm in nowhere claim that me as some person who's not even graduated like their degree yet has got any idea of the intricacies of some building management sustainability moment type thing. For me, no. I'm kind of navigating this uni and I see that my study association is doing Shell lunch lectures, and I'm just thinking, in what world are you still giving these people a platform, And sometimes it's just calling out stuff or just showing stuff that's wrong, and then people will just be like, but you're not offering any solutions either. And I'm just thinking like that's not what you don't take away people's voices from noticing that something's wrong. Build, organize, as an outside pressure, bring it onto the topic where decisions are being made, so that the people who actually know stuff or know how to handle stuff, who maybe haven't considered like a societal angle, have them act upon it, And that's also why I don't want to be part of any kind of sustainability council or something, because people have asked in the past of kind of, oh, lol, if you as you are, just why don't you just be part of the system then in this case? And that's not our role. That's not our point. Having people who work on the inside is really important. Having people who are the pressure on the outside, who can kind of monitor in a certain way what's going on, and then as soon as something comes out, be like, fantastic baby step, but like, come on, let's step it up, gang. It's a bit dire, That's what's kind of.
Yeah, I guess it definitely this kind of the societal groups that are flagging a problem as a separate part than offering solutions. Yeah. So indeed, and is this also part of the kind of your decolonizational part of the agenda of the University Rebellion agenda? Decolonizing, because I think you mentioned democratize, decolonize, and something else. Defossil, right?
Yeah.
Decarbonize.
Yeah, that sounds better.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you say a few words about these principles?
Yeah, I don't know if that's in particular kind of like to do with decolonizing, just offering like solutions, but I think it's all part of just kind of seeing what's going on and just kind of educating ourselves about topics just through discussion and kind of you just kind of get involved if you're in the community and kind of decolonizing, especially where all of our knowledge, our fantastic white technical knowledge is seen as the knowledge, and then other voices are completely kind of disregarded, or decolonizing again is kind of acknowledging our position in the world, especially with topics as silly as climate debt. We've been exploiting countries for like a long time, left them in like shit kind of conditions, and now it's like you're poor and you're being affected by climate change. Okay, we'll give you some debt so you can pay it back to us. What kind of logic is that? It's kind of, if you start introducing that point of view and kind of that old dynamic of we've exploited your countries and now you're facing the consequences of what we've been up to. Come on, we'll loan you some cash so you can sort yourselves out.
that bit is the decoloniality bit. You know, it's not particularly offering solutions, but it is again bringing topics and different point of views that aren't our Eurocentric point of view to the whole climate change discussion.
I think it comes into the point of the strongest shoulders should carry the heaviest loads, basically, where solving this climate crisis is something that has to happen worldwide, but not necessarily that the largest countries by size should be taking the biggest role. Now, the people, the countries that actually have this, the chance to do this, have the capacity to do most, should do most, because it's very likely that they also contributed the most to the problem in the first place.
Yeah, this is the question of historical responsibility of countries and in terms of emissions and so on.
Yeah, so that's also where the decolonizing comes from, because that is also based on all of the historical stuff and its consequences in the day now, kind of, and yeah.
But in terms of University Rebellion, in the university, how do you guys want to push this strategy of decolonize, democratize?
Yeah.
And decarbonize. Well, decarbonize, I guess we know,
so
because you have
decarbonize
demand.
is everything that we kind of tackle with, again, climate, and decolonize also comes within that, because if you kind of introduce kind of the aspects that aren't talked about immediately in maybe a technical uni, where the focus is on kind of solutions or making the most efficient, effective, you know, the technocratic solutions, techno-optimism approach, you know, that in itself is kind of colonial in a little bit, because it's all just focused on not taking account anything from the past or kind of how we have exploited the countries and stuff like that. So it is kind of related to all of that. Everything is kind of a big old, everything's mixed, and that's the beauty of intersectionality as well, as it's kind of taking a whole bunch of links and putting them together in a way that we haven't quite considered before because of kind of our position in this world.
Now I hear social scientific talk from you, talking about intersectionality.
Yeah, but that's also stuff that I learned through like interacting with people and getting that point of view, because it's not stuff I would have been confronted with otherwise at university and in my studies.
I think a good concrete example of where all the three decarbonize, decolonize, democratize come in. Just to give an example is the transparency that we asked for, maybe the initial occupation, where if you want to be able to say, look, we have cut ties with this company, or at least we've stopped taking promotion or whatever, well, you also have to be able to show it, and people have to be able to see it. Because if the funding coming in and going out of uni is one big black box that no one, except the ones at the top, know what's happening, no one can be certain that what they're saying is actually true. Which might sound, well, why would they lie? I guess we've seen that they're very capable of twisting truth and lying, so that's the thing.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah, part of democratize is kind of make it for the people, let people have a say, and kind of we believe that universities are for people and for students and for society as a greater whole, and it shouldn't be run like a business where you can just get the most out of unethical kind of companies and collaborations through that, and also giving them a license to be like, yo, we're working with students, so that means we are cool and great. So then you also kind of become part of the greenwashing scheme of look how cool we are, we're helping Shell with sustainability stuff. It's all part of that, and if you don't know where the money's coming from or kind of how a company might be influencing a study, or even just kind of not knowing who's kind of sponsoring the way, like the research you do, that's also part of the democratize kind of the transparency. I feel like it should be a bare minimum to know or to have it logged, right? So the fact that we're not even there yet, and that university has only kind of agreed to releasing stuff that is vaguely related to sustainability in aggregation buckets, is far from like the transparency that is, I feel like not. I say owed because like I don't agree with that word, but it should be there from the beginning. It's if we live in a democracy or something like that, It should be there from the beginning to kind of know exactly what you're doing as a student.
And University Rebellion, it is it works in the Netherlands, but also elsewhere in Europe, right?
University Rebellion was basically Extinction Rebellion students that split off in 2020, but it's been a movement in the Netherlands. That doesn't mean that there haven't been other kind of student movements popping up, and one that we've recently kind of aligned with is End Fossil Occupy.
Oh, yeah.
And that's been a big student movement throughout all of Europe, which was also seen in May. I think quite a few countries participated. And I went to an activism congress with End Fossil back in February to kind of just plan and get organised and coordinate the May of Occupations, which was a big old. Yeah, there was people from all over the world, but mostly in Europe, but like a big initiative to really kind of, as students, show action, get organised in schools and universities to kind of get them to cut ties. And then, in the Netherlands, we also coordinated nationally as well to make sure that like the occupations were very close to one another, and in a sense that we could bring like mass attention to put pressure on all universities and also governments and bring that up in the media. At the same time in a nice close period. So it's lots of student movements. University Rebellion, some groups have now become End Fossil groups. I think Eindhoven was still quite happy and strong with our name and branding, TM, mostly because that's how we're known on campus at the minute. And it's not about name and game politics. It's about finding where you have shared values, getting organised, the students putting in the capacity, feeling empowered, learning stuff by joining kind of the community and feeling like you have a bit of a say kind of in your future, because you do notice like the changes that kind of come from the actions you do.
Okay. So, but it's mostly local actions that you guys are doing, right?
As University Rebellion, it's like we see stuff on campus, get organised, based on capacity. We're quite a small group still, and it kind of shrinks and goes smaller.
I think it's good to stress that University Rebellion is not one national cooperation.
No, yeah.
I think it's just individual students that have assembled themselves into small groups with the people that they met that are similarly inclined, and given themselves a name, which in multiple cities is the name University Rebellion. In some cities they've chosen another name or take a different route. So in the end, it's all just students or similar that think, well, we should do something.
So really grassroots kind of local.
100%, absolutely. I feel like even if anything, like national coordination so rarely happens because it's mostly just like you find people on campus. Most people that I manage to get to join are my friends that I'm having conversations with about that kind of stuff. And then it's just kind of like, oh, do you guys want to chalk spray some things to raise attention to this? And then people are like, yeah, let's go. It's all based within kind of the main thing that the only structure that we have is kind of our manifesto and our values. And then everything within that is grassroots. If you kind of agree with these values and stuff, any action you want to organize, please come in with an idea. We can see how we can get it done. It's not some big corporation. It's just students who are a bit engaged and a bit outraged, and the community you get from that.
I wonder, what kind of role do you think you will have with this activist mindset in the future when you start working? When you start working, actually, as an engineer,
I think it's good to keep applying pressure from the outside and, where possible, from the inside as well. And I think it should be possible to combine this just with any ordinary job. I think that's what we've seen here. It's different in some other cities, but what we've seen here in Eindhoven is that there's not that much involvement of uni staff, with University Rebellion, it's mainly students, which doesn't necessarily have to be the way. But yeah, of course, I can imagine that it would be very difficult as a professor here to outwardly criticize, well, your employer basically in such a manner. So, of course, in that sense, combining activism with a job might bring out difficulties. But I'd say what you do in your own time should be your own choice. As long as you're not being violent or destructive, then I see no reason why it shouldn't be, and why you shouldn't combine it with a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I'd say like my own personal journey or growth with activism is kind of like even just being able to do a podcast now or feeling like I have enough like license to be sitting here, because you come like from a big place of imposter syndrome. At least I just do computer science. I've got no clue about climate-y stuff, but it's through like now third year kind of being active within University Rebellion, just kind of it's all about the attitude of kind of questioning around you, taking in or actively listening to maybe like voices that aren't given such a platform, or like seeking them out and just constantly educating yourself. I think kind of that's the attitude I'm taking with me, just kind of being open, wanting to listen, but also act. That's the point, because that's kind of what my inner world is. It's kind of, you know, I just see a lot of dire need to do something if I want to even have like a future, because it is like, again, every year we have the IPCC report. Everyone has a little panic for maybe a month.
If a month,
yeah,
for an hour, it's already
exactly. If anything, if that, and yeah, finding a balance between, first of all, being able to like live for myself and do stuff for me, and not always be within activism or within the mindset of like, oh fuck, the world's on fire, blah, blah, blah. But then also still kind of finding a nice balance of always kind of being able to see, being aware of where you're at, seeing like I don't want to ever work for a company that I label in my brain as evil, you know. But if I do work for a place and I notice that something's off, even like at HR level or something, I will find a way of like, who can I talk to about this? Because that's just kind of my way of going about things now. Yeah. Being active, listening, seeing where you can do something, and for now the main thing I tackle is climate related stuff, because on campus there are huge, incredible, big ties with the fossil fuel industry. So for me that's alarming, and that's what I'm thinking about constantly. But who knows where I'll be. I think I'll always kind of be in a space where I will be looking out for stuff or trying to learn about stuff.
Yeah, let's hope we all retain this kind of drive, activist drive. So, linked to that, talking about technical university, so an engineer of the coming 10 years or 20 years, what would you say is different between that engineer and engineer currently or 10 years ago, in terms of, I don't know, capabilities, mindset?
I mean, yeah, for me, I'd hope there'd be a big shift in kind of the, not just kind of existing in our field, but also existing kind of outside of our field and knowing what our position is in the world, kind of as an engineer in the global north or the west, or whatever you want to call it. Just kind of, if you have that extra information and it is part of the curriculum, then it automatically kind of becomes part of how you see the world and how you act, and that I think is a big shift to kind of just taking into account the real impact, or kind of not just the impact, but kind of how we got here in the first place, and what our world is at the minute, because our world, or the way we view the world, will be completely different from someone living in a completely different place that is also just starting to be destroyed or ravaged by stuff that will become unlivable. You know, I think that's the big difference, is we are getting away with not thinking about stuff that is already having such a big impact on the world, and that will impact us within the next 5 10 years. So, yeah.
I mean, I don't have much the large sample size of engineers I know over the years, so it's hard to actually compare. But I feel like there should be a big difference in the way, also how they are educated and how they go to work. But I feel like that difference isn't as extreme as it should be, which is coming back to the way education here is laid out, where the emphasis that should, in my opinion, should be on the climate crisis or more general, just really isn't there all that much. So where I hope that all the engineers going out of this institute do have that knowledge and feeling of trying to contribute to a solution. I'm not sure if it's getting taught all that much currently.
No, it's just, again, it's from not being exposed to topics or it being something that we can disregard so easily because it is so horrible to kind of think about. It's an immense privilege we have because it's not affecting us directly now that hard, except for like the odd summer where some people are like, it's nice to get a tan. So it's that big disconnect. I think that's the big issue. It's the big disconnect with kind of our role in everything and how what the consequences are, but the real life happening now kind of consequences. Because if it's not happening to you right now, then you don't have to think about it. You can just go move on, do your next course, and then nothing on campus, or unless you seek it out yourself, will get you to think about it. And it's just another silly example of kind of, I compare it to kind of like how I eat at the minute. Like I've never been like a strong label of like vegetarian or vegan, but it's just through knowing more about kind of how stuff works and kind of the food industry. It's like it's very, very, very rare now that I will ever like consume or buy meat, and that's just a natural kind of attitude shift, but not kind of playing the game of like you have to stop this 100% now, 100% imposing rules on stuff, but it is through exposing yourselves to topics as they kind of are and the real impact that they have on the world that you naturally shift your attitude as a whole. So it's not about blaming individuals for that one time they took a plane, but it is through, as a society as a whole, kind of moving away from traveling like that in the first place because you just are more aware of how you navigate the world. And it's that kind of societal shift that if we shift our attitudes based on kind of our position in the world and the real impacts of all of the societal crap that we don't usually question, that's when you can make more conscious choices. Or it's a blessing and a curse, because like last time I took a plane, which was the first time in a while, I was like, oh, this feels so weird and so wrong. But that's also a nice thing to realize, because it's like, yeah, that means I am at a place where I don't really want to take planes, and I'm organising holidays that I want to do, and it's just the general lifestyle is a lot more within the, between quotation brackets, sustainable, than if I hadn't gone through all of the conversations and community and stuff like that.
Yeah. I think it's a I think it's a good point you're making in general, where I feel like many people that just see UR or XR actions in the news only, for example, think that the ultimate goal is to ban them from their one night's vacation a year or their lovely piece of steak a month, which is not at all the point. To basically take away the last bit of fun we're having, but try to get society as a whole, and well, also the regulations, mainly for large companies, for example, to be such that things go a lot better generally. And if we can get this working, perhaps, well, that's one burger a month wouldn't be that bad. or perhaps buying leather shoes can be accepted. It's not something that one should be punished for. It's
It's definitely shifting the whole conversation away, kind of like individual impact is something that also carbon footprint is something that beautiful, fossil fuel industry came up with that term, just to shift the blame back on individuals. But yeah, it's by questioning kind of the big way that society kind of works at the minute that you can become more conscious, and then I feel like everyone as a whole, hopefully, will just have a better attitude toward the world of people.
That's a great point to end on. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks for having us.